Hello and welcome to Anime Worth Watching, and on this episode I'm going to be talking about one of my favourite shows of all time, Death Note. Now some of you might be wondering what the hell is with this massive box you got? Well, the thing is, this anime used to come packaged back in the day. It used to come in this big cardboard packaging, and inside you'd have each individual DVD in its own plastic case. Now these are bulky as hell, so luckily a few years later they ended up discontinuing these and they moved on to the more standard plastic cases that you see nowadays where all the DVDs are inside. But enough of my rambling, on with the review. Light Yagami is an extremely intelligent high school student who is dissatisfied with the current Japanese justice system. One day when wandering around on his school's campus, he finds this little black book called the Death Note, which was dropped on Earth by the Shinigami Ryuk. The Death Note gives its user the power to kill anybody simply by writing their name down. Light sees this as an opportunity to properly punish the criminals of Japan and basically become the new justice system. He does not go unopposed though, as he becomes the target of the Japanese police. They also end up recruiting the world's greatest detective who goes by the name L. And from there the story of Death Note basically turns into this giant game of cat and mouse. The police will come up with some kind of plan to try and trap Light, but then Light will come up with some kind of counterplay that gives him the advantage and allows him to continue killing. The advantage keeps shifting back and forth. There are a ton of twists and turns which keeps the story really tense. And this tension, which lasts the entire way through the story, is what really kept me watching the show. When I first watched Death Note back in the day, I ended up marathoning it in 2 days because I was just that enamored with the story. And then a few years down the road where I bought the DVDs, I again ended up marathoning it in 2 days, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen. The tension in the story grips you and just refuses to let you go up until the end. This doesn't mean that the story is flawless though, and one of the flaws comes in the form of the second arc. The second arc of this story is nowhere near as good as the first. I can't really explain why without getting into spoilers, but there are a lot of changes in the second arc which affect the show negatively. Over the years I've heard many people say that the story of Death Note becomes absolute crap in the second arc, especially when compared to the greatness that is the first arc. I don't really agree with this statement. I still found the second arc thoroughly enjoyable. While I will concede that there is a significant drop in quality, I would say that Death Note goes from being a fantastic show in the first arc to being a pretty good show in the second arc. Another negative for me is that I sometimes found the plans that these characters come up with a bit convoluted. Even when they spend 5 minutes explaining every intricate detail of the plan, I still found myself being very confused. Although I do admit that this might have just been me, and there may have been times where I wasn't listening hard enough to the explanations. Even though the story has its flaws, it has one of the most amazing endings I've ever seen in anime. It was extremely satisfying and it was everything I could have ever hoped for. Light at first is portrayed as your standard perfect pretty boy protagonist. He has good looks, he's good at sports, and of course he has very high grades as well. Once Light finds the Death Note though, his personality very quickly changes. He basically becomes an absolute psychopath and takes a lot of glee in his killing. While he does try and justify his actions, saying that this world is rotten and he has to kill all these criminals in order to clean up this rotten world, he also states that he's happy he found the Death Note because he was very bored, and he sees this killing spree as a way to stave off his boredom. To me, Light is probably one of the most terrifying villains in anime. There are 2 reasons for this, and the first reason is that the Death Note gives him the power to kill anybody at any time in any way that he wants. This power is massive, but that's not what truly makes Light terrifying to me. What makes him terrifying is his intelligence. Now, any normal person that decides to do what Light does and use the Death Note to kill people would probably get caught within a few weeks, maybe a few months at max. However, being that Light is extremely smart, he's able to come up with these strategies to stop him from getting caught. He goes up against these really powerful people at certain points in the show and he ends up killing them and getting away basically scot-free. At certain points in the show I even thought that Light was flat out unbeatable and would probably never get caught. And considering that Light is absolutely psychotic and he has this massive, massive power with the Death Note, the thought that he might never get caught is absolutely horrifying. Now, with all the negative traits I just listed off about Light, you might think that I hate him, but no. No, I actually like him as a character quite a lot. He's a fantastic villain, and I even found myself cheering for him at certain points in the story. Moving on to L, who's also extremely smart and is probably one of the few people that can match Light on his intelligence. While L is very introverted, he also has a very quirky and eccentric personality which makes him very likeable. In my opinion, L is the most important character in this show because if he didn't exist, there'd be no reason to root for the good guys. While all the members of the Japanese police have great personalities, none of them even come close to matching the epicness of Light, except for L. Another reason why L is so important is that he lets the characters within the show and the audience watching know that Light is a straight up mass murderer. It doesn't matter if he's killing criminals, it's still murder and a very evil act. Death Note also has a very good supporting cast, however the main focus of the show is on the two leads, Light and L. Not only are these two characters really fantastic and enjoyable to watch on their own, but they also have great chemistry with each other. Regardless of whether they're having a friendly conversation or they're in a fierce battle, the conversations between these characters were always really engaging and enjoyable to watch. The fact that I found both Light and L to be so likeable is one of the main reasons why I became so enthralled in this show. In terms of the visuals, the show holds up surprisingly well, considering that it's over 9 years old at this point. The most surprising thing about the visuals is that the animation is so good. Being that this show is mostly dialogue driven, many of the scenes don't really need that much animation. However, when there is some kind of action scene or the characters are moving around, it looks really fluid and natural. I'm amazed that the studio put so much effort into the animation for such a dialogue heavy show. However, one thing that's absolutely crucial in a dialogue heavy show is good voice acting. And in this show, the dub is fantastic. Everyone does a great job voicing their characters, especially Alessandro Giuliani, who voices L. He has a very monotone delivery, however this works really well with L's character and makes the jokes that he's involved in even more humorous. Another thing that really added to my enjoyment of this show is the soundtrack. They use the music in this show really well and it helps add to the drama of a lot of the scenes. One song that I feel I need to point out specifically is the second opening theme. It's a really fast-paced and intense metal song that fits perfectly with the dark theme of the show. I never thought I would like a Japanese metal song so much, and it's worth listening to even on its own. It's really that good. In terms of who I would recommend this show to, if you're a fan of thrillers, you will almost certainly love this show. I would also recommend Death Note to people who are fans of dialogue heavy shows, as the dialogue is very well written. In terms of people who should probably avoid this show, I wouldn't recommend it to people who are looking for something lighthearted. This show gets really dark, so if you're looking for something where you can just sit back and enjoy, I wouldn't recommend this at all. Also, if you're somebody who likes frequent action in your anime, I wouldn't recommend this show either. The show is mainly people talking, so some action anime fans might end up getting bored by it. Even though Death Note definitely isn't for everybody, I would recommend it to most anime fans as it had a surprisingly large range of appeal when it first came out. So try it out, watch a few episodes and you might just end up getting gripped the way I did. So anyway, thank you very much to everybody who watched this video. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment. If you like this video and want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.